Welcome back to Cancelled. Today, I want to talk about jealousy and envy. Have you ever felt envious of a friend or a sibling, someone on social media, maybe someone famous? Now, I know that we all can relate, so think about someone or something you've envied. As we get started, let's be clear about what we mean when we say envy. Today, we're not defining envy as looking at someone's cool new shoes and thinking, those are cool shoes, it'd be nice to have a pair. When we talk about envy today, we'll be talking about what happens when you start... When we talk about envy today, we'll be talking about what happens when you stop simply wanting or wishing something and you let it turn into something ugly, like frustration, anger, self-pity, or hatred. We've all had a moment, or maybe a few, when we've been a little envious of someone. But today I'm going to ask you to get a little uncomfortable, because I want us to get honest about the times when we've allowed a little bit of envy to prevent us from loving others. It's easy to make excuses with our envy. We might think, I'm not jealous, they're just a jerk. I'm not being judgmental, they really aren't that talented. I deserve what they have more than they do. Whether we wish we had someone's position on a team, their TikTok followers, their relationships, their shoes, their perfect family, or their full ride scholarship, it's easy for envy to creep in, take over, and cancel our joy, contentment, and self-worth. It might start small, but envy can grow into a monster. Let me give you an example of how envy can grow over time if we don't address it. Let's say you're trying out for a position on the basketball team. There's only one other person trying out for your position. They're giving the starting position while you become the backup. Sure, that probably stings a little bit, but you're fine. You can't always be the best at everything, right? When your friends ask about it, you tell them what happened and say it's fine. But you can't help but sneak in a comment about how that guy is just so entitled or full of himself, or just lucky because your game was a little off that day. At practice a few weeks later, your coach gives you a high five, but spends a full minute telling that guy what a great job he's doing. What a suck-up, you think. He's just not that good. He's popular, and his parents are rich, so he gets whatever he wants. Then in your first game, he makes an amazing play, and the whole team celebrates. He's yelling and cheering and fist bumping your teammates. When you tell the person next to you, he's so full of himself, it's disgusting. And did you know his parents basically bought him that spot on the team? This whole school is so messed up. Whoa, that escalated quickly. But this is what envy does. Something small can quickly become something big. It stops being about the thing you envied. It becomes about the person you envy. Here's how scripture talks about envy. In the book of Proverbs, which is a book filled with wise sayings, it says, Proverbs 27 verse 4, "Fury is cruel and anger a flood, but who can withstand jealousy?" Think back to the last time you were absolutely furious with someone. Do you remember how you felt in the moment? Do you still feel that way right now? Maybe you don't. Anger is a big emotion, but it comes and goes. Jealousy, on the other hand, keeps growing and growing. As it grows, it begins to harm us and our relationships with others. In the Bible, we find a story about a time when envy slowly destroyed a man named King Saul. Saul was the king of Israel, but he had a problem. Because Saul had been disobedient to God, God rejected Saul and chose a young shepherd boy named David to be the next king of Israel. Saul knew a new king was coming, but he didn't know who. When Saul first encountered David, he was impressed. David played music for him, and he even defeated a terrifying enemy for Saul's army. Maybe you've heard the story of David and Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine warrior who David defeated with a simple slingshot and God's help, when no one else in Saul's army was willing to risk it. David became friends with King Saul's son Jonathan. He even led tons of missions for Saul's army and always did them well. But then Saul let envy creep in. He saw strength and potential in David and didn't like that other people saw it too. While David was being recognized and celebrated, Saul's envy began to grow. Let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 18. As the troops were coming back, when David was returning from killing the Philistine, the women came out from all the cities of Israel to meet King Saul, singing and dancing with tambourines, with shouts of joy, and with 3-stringed instruments. As they danced, the women sang, "Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands." Saul was furious and resented this song. "They credited tens of thousands to David," he complained, "but they only credited me with thousands. What more can he have but the kingdom?" So Saul watched David jealously from that day forward. The next day, an evil spirit sent from God came powerfully on Saul, and he began to rave inside the palace. David was playing the lyre as usual, but Saul was holding a spear. Well, that certainly took a turn at the end there, huh? Saul wasn't interested in celebrating David or recognizing his achievements. He wanted him gone. Saul's jealousy was so great that he decided to cancel David once and for all, with a spear. Saul's first attempt to kill David may have failed, but he was eager to try again. Let's go to chapter 19. Saul ordered his son Jonathan and all his servants to kill David. But Saul's son Jonathan liked David very much, so he told him, "My father, Saul, intends to kill you. Be on your guard in the morning and hide in a secret place and stay there. I'll go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are and talk to him about you. When I see what he says, I'll tell you." Jonathan spoke well of David to his father Saul. He said to him, "The king should not sin against his servant David. He hasn't sinned against you. In fact, his actions have been a great advantage to you. He took his life in his hands when he struck down the Philistine, and the Lord brought about a great victory for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. So why would you sin against innocent blood by killing David for no reason?" Saul listened to Jonathan's advice and swore an oath. "As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be killed." So Jonathan summoned David and told him all these words. Then Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he served him as he did before. When war broke out again, David went out and fought against the Philistines. He defeated them with such great force that they fled from him. Now an evil spirit sent from the Lord came on Saul as he was sitting in his palace, holding a spear. David was playing the lyre, and Saul tried to pin David to the wall with the spear. As the spear struck the wall, David eluded Saul, ran away, and escaped that night. Saul sent agents to David's house to watch for him and kill him in the morning. But his wife Michal warned David, "If you don't escape tonight, you will be dead tomorrow." So she lowered David from the window, and he fled and escaped. After David escaped, he ran as far away from Saul as he could, with Saul in pursuit. He hunted David from city to city, his envy so great that Saul was ready to do anything in order to see David dead. But some surprising things happened during that pursuit. David had a chance to kill Saul, but he didn't take it. David had a second chance to kill Saul, but he didn't take that chance either. David and Saul finally called a truce, and they promised never to harm each other. They finally parted ways and never saw each other again. I wish I could tell you that Saul totally turned his life around and chose to love David instead of jealously hating him, but I can't. Saul stopped trying to kill David, so I guess that's a win, but it didn't appear that Saul ever stopped hating him. Not every story in the Bible has a happy ending or comes with a clear lesson or practical takeaway, but here's what we could do with stories like Saul's. We can reflect on his life and choices, consider how his actions line up with what we know about God, and look to the words of Jesus. Matthew 22. "Teacher, which command in the law is the greatest?" He said to him, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and most important command. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." When you're not sure what to do, come back to these words from Jesus. Whether we're feeling the first hints of envy or we're so jealous we're ready to throw a spear at someone, Jesus' words can always guide us. Love the people you envy. So who in this story do you relate to? Are you like David? Do you feel like someone or a group of people are always out to get you because they're jealous of you? Do you feel alone, confused, or like you've been canceled? Are you like Saul? You've probably never thrown a spear at someone, but is there someone you thought about while hearing Saul's story? Someone you really dislike because, if you're honest, you're a little bit jealous of them? Maybe you're like both of them. Chances are you have things in common with both Saul and David. I know I do. No matter how you relate to David and Saul, I think we can all agree that envy destroys our relationships because you can't love and let envy grow at the same time. But how do we stop being envious? It starts by finding contentment, fulfillment, and peace in the God who made us. If we want to replace envy with love, this is where we have to start. When our contentment is found in Jesus, it becomes so much easier to love others, including those who have things we wish we had. But getting our hearts right is only the first step in replacing envy with love. If we really want to love the people we envy, we have to do something more. Instead of envying people who have something we want, what if we celebrated them? Instead of imitating the call-out culture of the world around us, what if we chose to call out others' greatness? Here's one more idea. When we are the people who are being envied, instead of keeping all of our good things to ourselves, what if we decided to share what we have? You can start practicing this right now. Let's start changing our culture for the better by celebrating each other, calling out the greatness we see in others, and thinking of ways we can share what we have. Start with your family and your best friends. Tell them what they're great at and what qualities or skills of theirs you wish you had. If they respond in a similar way, offer to share what you have in some way. Now, maybe this will come easy to you. Maybe it'll be difficult, or maybe you're not ready. That's okay. What I'm challenging you to do isn't easy. Loving people we envy isn't natural. But with God's help and Jesus' example, I think we can learn how to do it well. If you want to love like Jesus loves, and I hope you do, love the people you envy.